Hi guys, thanks for joining me today. If you're new here, I'm Marilyn and my channel is Making with Marilyn. If you're someone returning, thank you so much for coming back. On today's video, I'm going to make a sublimation tumbler. I was scrolling through all the different designs that Creative Fabric has just within the last few days, and I found a tumbler design I just couldn't resist. It made me remember that I had bought these sneakers a very long time ago, at least last summer or so, and honestly, I've never worn them. So I found this tumbler design. It's going to go perfectly with these. I need to pull these to the front of my shelf and start wearing them. Now the products that I'll be using today, I'm going to use this Enure tumbler press. I'm going to use HTV Runt sublimation paper. That is my go-to paper. I absolutely love it. I'm going to use some heat-resistant tape. I have a sublimation tumbler that I bought off of Amazon. It's a hippo tumbler. I have some rubbing alcohol, a heat-resistant glove, a paper towel for cleaning my tumbler, and then some butcher paper to wrap around it when it's in the sublimation tumbler press. Now, in addition to these things, I'll also use my computer to make my design or to just basically adjust it to the right size. I'm going to print it on an Epson EcoTank 15000. Now that is a wide format printer. It prints up to 13 inches wide. It was not meant to be a sublimation printer. It is not marketed to be a sublimation printer, but a lot of crafters use those as sublimation printers. Basically, all you do is instead of putting the ink in it that came with it, you put sublimation ink instead. Now you do have to understand that probably voids your warranty, but I have used mine over and over. It does a wonderful job and I absolutely love it. Now, if this is something that you're interested in, sit back, relax, and let's get started. But before we move over to the computer so that I can show you my design and how I set it up to print, if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing that. If you do, tap that bell and then be sure and select the all notifications. That way YouTube lets you know anytime I upload new content. Now I'm going to print my image in Inkscape. Inkscape is a free design software, but you could use Silhouette, you could use Illustrator, you could use whatever printing software or design software that you like to use. So I'm going to go right up here to File, click on it, and since I already have the page open, I'm going to say Import. Now it went to my downloads, so let's go down and see if we can find this image. All right, I think this is it right here. And one is a straight-sided one is tapered. I believe this is the straight-sided one. That's the one I want because I use skinny straight tumblers. Now to import it, I use all these defaults. I don't mess with them, so I'm just going to say OK. And there it is. Let me make that really large so you can see the details. Look how they've mimicked the texture of fabric. I just think this is a super cute design. All right, let's go ahead and make that smaller. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and come up here and I want to change my units, which you can't see. So let me move this over so you can see it. Okay, I stretched that out far enough. You can see the units right here. Currently it's in millimeters. Let's go ahead and click the down arrow and change that to inches. All right, this is pretty close to the size that I want. For this brand of tumbler, I like to print it at 9.4 inches wide and 8.2 inches tall. It's already at 8.2, so with it unlocked, I'm just going to change this to 9.4. When I hit enter, you'll see how that slightly stretches it. Now let's go ahead and lock the proportions. Now my sheet of paper back there is 8.5 by 11. Let me show how you can change that if that's not what yours is defaulted to. I used to have this on 12 by 12 because I was doing so much things with Cricut, but then I changed it to this. So to make sure you have the right size of paper, go right up here to File, Document Properties, and let's change that to inches. And actually I have it on A4. So let's click on that. And what I need is US letter 8.5 by 11. Okay. So it already changed and all you have to do is click right out of it. Now if I were to print this right now, Anything off the paper would not print. That would get cut off. Everything here has to be on the paper. Now, typically with sublimation prints, you always want to print them in the mirrored image. In this case, it really doesn't matter, but since you might be doing something else, let's go ahead and flip this. So I'm going to click on it, go to Object, and say Flip Horizontal. All right, let's go ahead and go up here to Object, and let's rotate it 90 degrees. It doesn't matter if it's clockwise or counterclockwise, it just needs to fit within the lines of this piece of paper. Let's go ahead and click on it, make sure it really is. Now it says 8.5 wide because I turned it, and then 9.4 tall. That's exactly what I want. So let's go ahead and print this. I'll go right up here to File, Print. I'm going to use my Epson EcoTank 15,000. I have the standard drivers that came with it. After I got it, I tried to change the drivers and my printing quality wasn't as good. And so I just did a reset and I went back to the way it came. So here's all I do. I go up to Page Setup. I change it to one-sided. I go to Color and I make sure it's going to print in color. You can print in grayscale. Let's go Color. And then the last thing is I go to Advanced and I use high quality. Now we'll print, and then after it prints out, we're going to go ahead and meet back over at the table. We're going to wrap it, heat it, and hopefully this turns out really super cute. Now, I forgot to mention a few things in my intro that I'll be using. I'm going to use a rotary cutter. I have this metal ruler. It has the cork on the back, and then something in order to cut on. I like to use this instead of the guillotine cutter or even the cutters that have the roller. It just works better for me. Those other cutters, sometimes I would actually crinkle the paper, and I do such a better job with this. But use whatever works for you. Now let's start by looking at the tumbler. It's Hippo brand, so I put an H on there, and I just started doing this. I put the dimensions of what I want to print right there. Now I only did it on one box because it seems like I always have to remeasure these. So I need to either put it on the box or I need to put in a craft journal what size I print out for what brand of tumblers, because different brands are different sizes. So don't use my measurements, make sure and measure your own tumbler. All right, so these are very nice tumblers. Inside, you have the rubber thing that goes on the bottom, and then with each tumbler, you also get a straw and a cleaner. And I'll show you that after I've made the tumbler. For now, let's just move this out of the way. Now, I like to clean my tumblers. I use 90% rubbing alcohol. You can just spray a little bit of alcohol on a paper towel. And then I put my hand inside just to keep it really clean. Some people skip this step, which is fine if it works for them. But I figure for just a little bit of added time, I'd go ahead and do this step. Now I'm going to set this aside. It'll dry very quickly. And then let me just dry up anything that might be here on the table. You don't want to get any liquid, alcohol, water, anything like that on your sublimation prints. Now that I'm done with that, let me go ahead and bring it over here. So here it is. Isn't that cute? I just love that. Now, the way that I cut my designs is using this ruler. At least on one end, I make sure there's absolutely no white paper left. And then that end needs to go down against your sublimation tumbler. Now, if you make sure there's no white on either end, it doesn't matter which end goes down. You just want to make sure that what's against your tumbler has no white on it, or you're going to have a white streak down your tumbler. So here's how much I cut off. Just a tiny bit. And so I actually slightly oversize my designs That way I have a little bit of extra room to play with, a little cushion. Now on this end, as long as I remember to put it on top of the other piece against the tumbler, it doesn't matter if there's a little white strip. And I can see there is. See a tiny little white strip there? Just real tiny. All right, so let's go ahead and move to the top of the tumbler. Again, I don't want any white up there. So once again, I have just a tiny bit of the design on that piece that I cut off. Now the bottom kind of wraps around the bottom of your tumbler. So if there's a little bit down there, it's probably not going to show. But I would still prefer that there's no white down there either. Okay, so now it's reality check time. The only piece of this that has any white on it is right here. Let's just see if this goes all the way around my tumbler. Okay, it goes all the way around. It's a little too tall though. See how that sticks up quite a ways? I don't want that. So I'm going to go ahead and trim some of that off. And I don't mind on this one because I really felt like the laces were down quite a ways. So I don't mind cutting off part of the top at all. Now here's another thing. With the bottom of this being really light, it's going to be kind of forgiving. So around the bottom, it's going to be very forgiving. I really like that about this design. Okay, that looks pretty darn perfect. So it's slightly above it, which is exactly what I want. And it ends at the bottom of the tumbler. So it's going to wrap around this beveled edge a little bit. Now let's remember, this has a little white on it. So when I wrap this, I need this side to be on top. So I have the color against the tumbler, and then the little strip of white is on top of this side of the paper. But that's not straight. Let's go ahead and turn the tumbler over. I want to make sure I know which side has the white, and it's this side on my right. So I'm going to go ahead and put the good side down and that side over it. Now I'm going to put one piece of tape on this, and then I'm going to make an adjustment. I want to make sure that this paper goes all the way to the top and slightly above the top. And it looks like it does. Because if you don't have it all the way to the top and you don't have a design against the white at the top, you're going to have a white ring around the top of your tumbler. So if I wanted the paper to be moved up at all, I put my hand in it and I just kind of tug on it like that. Now that went way too far, but that's the process that I use. Okay, I think that looks pretty good, except for, looks a little bit short right there. So let's try this again and not push so hard. All right, I like that. So I feel like I need to tighten this up just a little bit. So I'm going to pull this side of the tape back up. I have the tape on the side that goes on top. So I'm going to hold this in place and really pull to get that down tight. Now, I have a lot of videos on how to tape, and in fact, at the end of this video, I'm going to put an end screen where you can link directly to it. The one that's the most popular, that I think I really spent a lot of time on the details. So if you want to see all those details and listen to me talk some more about taping and why I tape the way I tape, check out that video. I'll also put a link to it in the video description in case you don't know how to use those end screens. So I'm going to go ahead and tape this the way I always do. And I'll probably fast forward through a lot of it because, again, I have a lot of videos where I really talk through the taping, which I think is super important. Before, when I first started doing tumblers, I had several that really weren't very good quality. I would have white spots at the top or the bottom, especially where it wrapped around the bottom. And over time, I think I've really done a pretty good job of figuring out what works for me. Now, there are people that barely use any tape and theirs come out just perfectly fine. Mine didn't, and so this is just the process that I use. Now, I'll talk a little bit about it, but go watch that other video if you'd like to. I'm going to put 2 pieces on the top, and I'm going to put it on the side of the paper that's on top. So this piece on the left is on top of the piece on the right. So I want to pull with that, not against it. So this first piece of tape goes all the way around the top, not super tight. And I try to keep it just about even with the top. Now I'm struggling today. All right, I am not pulling very tight at all. This piece of tape is just going to give some stability to the paper. Now my next piece is going to be really very, very tight. And I'll show you how far up I go. I go about halfway, so the tape is about halfway on the old tape and halfway above it. So now I'm going to stretch really tightly, wrap this around. Oh, I'm sorry, that was probably out of the view of the camera. And what that does is it pulls it so it stretches and then it rebounds. So it's kind of pulling your paper in already. And I just start going around, helping it kind of over the sides of the tumbler. And then I just press it straight down. So I don't twist around, I press it straight down. Now here in a minute, I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom. So I'll just fast forward through that. But before I go there, I look for little gaps so I can see one. Let's point with my little screwdriver here. If you look right here, you might be able to see there's a little gap where the paper's not quite against the tumbler. So you can either take your finger and rub it really hard. Some people will rub it on their table. And what I like to do is I like to take something like this and really go around and press that down. Okay. Now, notice down here, I don't have my paper too long. It's going to go just barely over the bevel. Sometimes I have it a little shorter than that. And when you push your paper in, see how it causes your paper to kind of buckle? Because there's less surface space. So that extra paper has to go somewhere. That's what can cause those little white kind of triangles at the bottom. So if this had a lot of color at the bottom, I probably would actually cut this just a little bit shorter. But remember, the bottom of this design is white or gray. It's going to be pretty forgiving. So let me go ahead, do the same thing down here I did at the top, and then we'll move on. So at this time, let's go ahead and look at this Sublimation Tumbler press. Now inside, I have what I call a heater tumbler. It's an old tumbler, and I just store it in there because you're not supposed to heat these things up without something in them. So I'm going to go ahead and just close that up. And then here's what it looks like. You turn it on the side. There's a little toggle switch there. So let me go ahead and turn that on. Now this press has 4 settings, or 4 presets. You can set them to whatever you want. On my first one, I have it set to 375 degrees for 50 seconds. On my second one, I have it set to 350 degrees for 15 seconds. I use that second one when I'm pressing hats. I like to press rhinestones to hats, and this particular model actually has a hat attachment. But we're going to stick with preset number 1. I haven't added anything to 3 or 4, so they're still just on the defaults of what came on it. But I adjusted 1 and 2 for what I wanted. Now you can see it heats up pretty fast. When it gets up to temperature, I'll open it up. I'll put my tumbler in with some butcher paper around it. I'm going to press it for 50 seconds, open it up, rotate it 180 degrees, 50 more seconds, and then we're ready to let it just cool down. So when this gets up to temp, I'll be back. All right, this is up to temperature. Now, you need to have something to lay your tumbler on when you get it out. And so a lot of the times I just use a tile, like a porcelain tile or a ceramic tile. But today I'm going to use my little Cricut pressing mat. Now, this is extremely hot, so you definitely want to wear at least one glove. I typically just wear one glove, but wear 2 if you feel more comfortable. All right, let's go ahead and open that up a little bit more. Now this is my paper cradle. It's just butcher paper. And then here's my tumbler. I want to start with the tape facing me. So I put it in like this. All right, let's move that out of the way. I'm just going to slide this in from the side. And then I want to make sure it's fairly centered. So I'm going to look at each end. All right, move it to the left just a little bit. And then we'll close this up. Now when I close it up, I have to hit enter right here to get the 50 seconds to start counting down. Once it beeps, I'm going to open it up, rotate it. I have to enter again to get it to 50 seconds, and then I press enter again to get it to start counting down. Now I love this press, but as I was talking about on a live recently, that is one minor annoyance, that it doesn't just start counting down automatically. But I love the press, and that's not a deal breaker for me. All right, it beeps, so I'll go ahead and open this. And then I like to have the open end on the right because I'm right-handed, and I can just grab in there and twist. There, hopefully you saw that tape go by. So I just put it to the back. So I've rotated it about 180 degrees. Close this back up, hit enter to get it to 50, and enter again to get it to count down. So I'll see you back here in about 45 more seconds. Now I'm just making this one tumbler, so I'm going to go ahead and turn off the power. And let's go ahead and pull this out. And then I'll set it right over here. I'll get rid of this, get it put up, and then I'll be back here once this cools off just a little bit. I'm not going to wait very long. 3 or 4 minutes is plenty. You just want to get it so that it's below the temperature where it would sublimate before you start moving that paper around. Otherwise, you could get a little ghosting or blurring. All right, that's still warm. It's kind of hot, but I can actually hold it. I don't need these gloves on anymore, or the one glove. Now, look at these scissors. It goes along with my animal print. I just got these about a week ago. They are so heavy and so cute. I got them off of Amazon. They have zebra stripes as well, but I really like that. Now, just in case you're interested, I'll put a link to those in the video description as well. Again, they are nice and heavy. And look, this gold, that's so pretty. Or brass, or whatever that is. It's very, very pretty. All right, so that little silver thing's going to come off. That's not a problem. I'm going to cover the bottom with that black rubber thing anyway. So I'm just going to put a slit in that so that then I can start pulling this off. And let's just go ahead and pull that up. I am so excited to see this. I just thought this was the cutest design. Not that I need a cup to match my shoes. I just love animal print. Ooh, I see it. I can see a little peek of it. It looks really good. All right, shouldn't be too much longer now. I'm tearing off a little bit of the paper getting this tape off. That's okay. Not sure why I'm struggling getting this tape off, but I am. Usually it comes off a little bit easier. If you use scissors or something like that, just be careful that you don't poke in through the paper and scratch your sublimation tumbler. Okay, let me look. Let me look. Oh my goodness. Look at that. That is so cute. All right, where's my seam? I can tell down here because I didn't have that quite straight, but there's my seam. They didn't quite meet up in the right place, but that's not bad. I'll take that. There's the front. And see how I said it's forgiving? You just don't have to worry too much about those puckers. All right, so here's the top seam. Everything looks so good. It's a super cute design. Let's see how it looks with my shoes. That's so cute. All right, it's time to start wearing these and using this when I do. Now let me go ahead and put this little rubber piece on the bottom. You just want to have it fairly centered up, and then I like to put it on the table and just push down. And then we'll get the lid on there. Let me grab the straw set. So this straw set that came with these has a metal straw and then this cleaning thing. So I just love that. So cute. All right, well, thank you so much for joining me. As always, I appreciate you being here and watching. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, leave them in the comment section below. Again, if you want to make sure that you get notification of all the videos that I put out, make sure you subscribed, tap that bell, and then make sure you've selected all notifications. And then if you'd like to see a video where I go into more detail about the taping and why I do it that way, check out the video on this end screen. Thanks again for joining me, and until my next video, bye-bye.